Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a really big story this week, the U.S. lifting sanctions on Syria. President Trump made the announcement May 13th, 2025. Quite a shift in Middle East policy.
Yeah, a major shift. And it's important to remember the context here. This comes after the Assad regime's collapse back in December 2024. And now there's this new transitional government led by President al-Sharaa.
Right. So our mission today really is to understand this decision. Why now? What are the key pieces? And maybe most importantly, what could this actually mean for Syria going forward?
Exactly. It's definitely worth digging into.
Okay, so the sources point pretty quickly to a specific event. President Trump meeting President al-Sharaa in Riyadh. Apparently the first time U.S. and Syrian leaders have actually met in, what, 25 years?
25 years, yeah, that's a quarter of a century. It really underscores the diplomatic freeze.
So what was the tone of that meeting? What came out of it?
Well, what's striking is the language used. Trump really emphasized Syria needing to rebuild, needing stability. He said something like, they have endured enough disasters, wars, and killing. That feels different, doesn't it?
It does. Less about regime change, maybe more about pragmatism, regional stability.
Sort of seems that way. Maybe the thinking is that continued instability is actually the bigger threat now.
In a sense. And there were conditions, right? The material says Trump pushed for normalizing ties with Israel. And also for Syria to take over responsibility for those ISIS detention camps.
Yes, pretty clear asks. And on the Syrian side, al-Sharaa apparently committed to forming an inclusive government and also, crucially, to engaging internationally again. That commitment was probably quite important for the U.S. decision.
Okay, so that's the direct U.S.-Syria interaction. But this wasn't happening in isolation, was it? You mentioned international alignment.
No, definitely not in isolation. The U.S. is, in a way, catching up. The EU and the UK, they'd already suspended some sanctions on things like banking, energy, transport sectors in Syria.
Ah, okay, so there was already momentum building elsewhere.
Exactly. And France has also signaled a gradual lifting of its own sanctions, but they're tying it specifically to political reforms and human rights progress.
So it sounds like a broader consensus was forming, that the old sanctions regime wasn't working.
That seems to be the feeling, yes. The sources use phrases like ineffective and hindering recovery. There was a growing sense internationally that maybe the sanctions were actually becoming counterproductive to helping Syria stabilize.
Right, but lifting sanctions doesn't magically solve everything, obviously.
Yeah.
Syria still faces enormous hurdles.
Oh, absolutely enormous. I mean, first, the transitional government has to somehow integrate all these different political factions. That's a huge task. Then there's just the physical rebuilding. Infrastructure is decimated. And you have millions of displaced people who might want to return.
And getting the money for all that, even with sanctions lifted, is international aid and investment guaranteed to flow quickly?
That's a really big question mark. There are actually concerns mentioned. Apparently, the new Syrian government has put in place some pretty strict requirements for aid organizations wanting to operate there.
So that could actually slow things down, even with the sanctions gone.
It could. It definitely raises questions about how easily and effectively aid will get to the people who desperately need it. Bureaucracy.
So summing up then, lifting these sanctions is clearly a pivotal moment, a potential turning point for Syria after years of conflict.
It absolutely is. It opened the door, an opportunity for rebuilding, for engaging with the world again.
But there's always a but.
Well, yeah. The huge question hanging over everything is, can this new government actually deliver? Can they implement real reforms, protect human rights, create an environment that's truly inclusive? That's what will determine if this leads to lasting peace or, well, something else.
A lot riding on the next steps. Definitely a situation to keep watching closely. Thanks for breaking that down.